Once a year during the Feast of Tabernacles, Jerusalem lit up. In the court of women, there were 4 massive golden lampstands that were lit each night. And these were big enough and the fire was large enough that people throughout the whole city could see its glow. It commemorated the pillar of fire that led the people of Israel through the wilderness. And so imagine Jesus standing there at the same courtyard in sight of those lampstands, and he says something that everyone everyone got it. Everyone knew what he was saying. When he was standing there in that glow, everyone knew what he was claiming. They understood the metaphor, they understood the symbolism. And what it is that he said. He said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. So we find ourselves in John chapter 8, verses 12 through 30. And this is the second time he has used the light as a metaphor. And when he says this, the Pharisees push back immediately, and they understand what he is saying. But they say, here you are appearing as your own witness, so your testimony isn't valid. The reason that they're saying that his testimony is not valid is because his claim is so great. His claim is so important that according to their law, because it's just him, his claim is invalid. So they're trying to stop him from taking their power. But Jesus doesn't back down, and he says, even if I testify about myself, he says his testimony is valid. And he says, because I know where I came from, I know where I'm going, and you don't. You judge by human standards, and he says, I pass judgment on no one, but if I did, my judgment would be true because I'm not alone. I stand with the Father who sent me. Your own law says that the testimony of true witnesses is true. And he says, but I testify about myself, and the Father who sent me testifies about me too. So there's 2 witnesses, he's saying. So they ask, well, where is your Father? Because he's not obviously standing there next to him. And Jesus says, you don't know me or my Father. If you knew me, you would know my Father also. So he's saying, you don't know who I really am, because if you knew who I really was, you wouldn't be asking me this question because you would know who my Father is. And then he says something that unsettles the listeners. He says, I'm going away, and you will look for me, and you will die in your sin. Where I go, you cannot come. So the religious leaders talk among themselves. Is he going to kill himself? What does this mean? And Jesus answers, you are from below, and I am from above. You are of this world, and I'm not of this world. I told you that you would die in your sins unless you believe that I am he. You will indeed die in your sins. So they ask, well, who are you? And Jesus says, I've been telling you from the beginning, meaning I've been telling you from the beginning of who I am, but you're not going to understand it until you have lifted the Son of Man up. Then you'll know who I am. And even as he's telling us this, John says that many believed in him. I think there's 3 things that Jesus said that are important to unpack a little bit. And first is he says, I am. So that's not a figure of speech. And it's the same phrase that God used to name himself to Moses in the burning bush. He said, I am who I am. And so Jesus isn't being poetic. He's not being snarky. He's naming himself with that divine name out loud in the temple in front of the religious authorities. And he's telling them in front of the lampstands that are a symbol, a metaphor of who God is. So they're there having this festival. They're lighting these lights to commemorate God who led them out of the wilderness with a pillar of fire. He's standing in the symbol of that pillar of fire, and he's saying, I am. I'm the light of the world. Very powerful. Number 2, he says, lift it up. Now that means exaltation, meaning lifted up like almost a worship thing, but it also means crucifixion, and we know that to be the cross. And as you know, the cross is the lowest, most shameful place imaginable. It was only criminals that died this way. But as John is telling us this, he's telling us that it is the cross, that lowly, shameful place of death, where Jesus' identity will finally be unmistakable. Not only will we see Jesus' execution, but we will see his glory in the same event. Number 3, you will die in your sins. It's a diagnosis, really, not a threat. He's not like condemning them. Jesus had said this back in chapter 5 where John recorded it, but the evidence is standing right in front of them. And they just didn't want to believe. So the obstacle was never lack of proof. Their problem and why they would die in their sins because they wouldn't believe in Jesus was because they just didn't want to. It would cost them way too much to follow Jesus. And Jesus tells us this in the parables. He tells us this in his conversations with his disciples. It's not the lack of proof. It's the lack of will. It's the will. They do not want to follow him because of how much it will cost them. And that's the same problem we have today. Too many people don't want to follow Jesus because of how much it's going to cost them. And I think it's important to understand that Jesus doesn't argue his way into being believed. He doesn't try to use logic or try and convince us in any way. He just states who he is plainly in the middle of questions and sometimes hostile. He just keeps teaching. And right there in that same conversation where the religious leaders are edging towards his talk of death, Jesus tells us that many believed in him. They believed in him because they understood what he was saying and were willing to pay that price. And I guess what I'm trying to say is light does not need to win a debate to prove that it is light. Follow the light and you won't be walking in the dark. Follow Jesus and you'll be walking in the light forever. So what's holding you back? Have you counted the cost? And you think that following Jesus costs you too much? Well, it costs you forever. Grace and peace to you. God bless you. Have a great week.